I still can't believe what happened that Thursday afternoon when two women in matching tennis visors decided to break into my garage. They came armed with a crowbar and clipboards, thinking they had authority from some HOA. What they didn't expect was my 19-year-old son Jeremy, fresh from his military service, waiting inside with his legally registered firearms. The security camera footage shows everything. At 3:12 p.m., these two women approached my garage at 143 Maple Ridge Drive. One of them, who I later learned was named Patricia Harmon, wedged a crowbar under the garage door while her accomplice, Sandra Wilkes, stood there holding a clipboard like it was some kind of official shield. They managed to pry the door up about 3 feet before Jeremy spotted them from inside, where he'd been working on his motorcycle. My son had been home on leave, helping me organize the workshop. He's always been protective of our property, especially after what we went through when his mother passed 5 years ago. So, when he saw strangers forcing their way into our garage, his training kicked in. He grabbed his two Glock 19 pistols from the gun safe and took a defensive position behind the workbench. The look on those women's faces when they ducked under the partially open door and saw Jeremy crouched there was priceless. He didn't point the weapons at them, just held them at low ready and said in his calmest military voice that they needed to leave immediately. Sandra screamed so loud it set off 3 car alarms. Patricia actually grabbed a garden rake from the wall and held it in front of her like she was fending off a wild animal. Let me back up and explain how we got to this point. My name is Robert Morrison, and I'm a 47-year-old furniture maker who moved to Pine Valley Estates 3 years ago. It's one of those cookie-cutter neighborhoods where every house looks identical, and people care more about their lawn height than actual human connections. I bought the place because it had a large garage I could convert into a woodworking shop, not because I wanted to join their little social club. The trouble started with Patricia Harmon, the self-appointed president of what she called the Pine Valley HOA. This woman treated the neighborhood like her personal kingdom. She drove around in her white Lexus with a license plate that read, Rules 1, taking photos of people's properties and leaving nasty notes about violations. She once fined my neighbor $200 because his mailbox was the wrong shade of black. Patricia had been targeting me for months. It started with complaints about my garage door being open during the day while I worked. Then she claimed the sawdust from my shop was creating a health hazard, even though I have a professional dust collection system. She sent me 17 certified letters about various violations, each one more ridiculous than the last. One actually cited me for excessive garage door usage. I tried being polite at first. I explained that I ran a legitimate business from my home with all the proper permits. I showed her my business license and insurance documents. She just sniffed and said that commercial activities violated the HOA covenants. When I asked to see these covenants, she said they were being updated, and I'd get a copy soon. That was 6 months ago. The harassment escalated quickly. Patricia started taking photos of my garage from the street at all hours. She called code enforcement, claiming I was running an illegal manufacturing operation. She told neighbors I was probably cooking drugs because she could smell wood-stain fumes. She even tried to get the post office to stop delivering packages to my address, saying it was a safety concern. Then came the morning I found a bright pink notice taped to my garage door. It was printed on what looked like official letterhead, complete with a fake seal and everything. The notice claimed I was in violation of Section 9B of the Pine Valley HOA bylaws for operating a suspicious workshop with potentially hazardous activities. It demanded I cease all operations immediately or face legal action. That's when I knew Patricia had completely lost touch with reality. I'd done my research, and there was no legally registered HOA for Pine Valley Estates. The original developer had planned to create one but never filed the proper paperwork. Patricia's little organization was nothing more than a social club with delusions of grandeur. They had about as much legal authority as a book club. I ignored the notice and continued working. That must have pushed Patricia over the edge because 3 days later, she decided to take matters into her own hands. She recruited Sandra Wilkes, her loyal sidekick who followed her around like a lost puppy, and they hatched their brilliant plan to break into my garage while I was at a client meeting. What they didn't know was that Jeremy had come home from his base in North Carolina the night before. He was on a 2-week leave and had offered to help me catch up on some projects. That Thursday afternoon, I'd left him in the garage working on his motorcycle while I went to deliver a dining set to a customer across town. Jeremy later told me he first noticed something was wrong when he heard metal scraping against metal outside the garage door. He thought maybe I'd come back early and was having trouble with my key. But when the door started lifting without the opener being activated, he knew something wasn't right. He quickly moved to secure his firearms, which he kept locked in a concealed safe designed to look like a vintage tool cabinet. By the time Patricia and Sandra had lifted the door enough to squeeze under, Jeremy was in position. He maintained perfect trigger discipline, never pointing the weapons at them, just making it clear he was armed and they were trespassing. His military bearing must have been intimidating because Patricia immediately dropped the crowbar and started babbling about HOA authority and emergency inspections. Jeremy calmly told them to sit on the floor and keep their hands visible while he called 911. Sandra started crying and asking if this was some kind of citizen's arrest. Patricia tried to pull rank, claiming she had every right to inspect the property for covenant violations. She actually pulled out a laminated card that said HOA President like it was a badge. The police arrived within minutes. The responding officers found the whole situation absurd. Here were 2 middle-aged women in tennis attire who had broken into a garage and were being legally detained by a military member protecting his father's property. The security footage clearly showed forced entry, and Patricia still had the crowbar in her hand when they arrived. While the officers were taking statements, I pulled up in my truck. You can imagine my shock seeing 2 police cruisers in my driveway and my son standing there explaining the situation to the cops. Patricia had the audacity to run up to me, shouting about how my son had threatened her with deadly weapons and how she was going to sue me for emotional distress. That's when things got really interesting. The officers asked Patricia to provide documentation of her authority to enter private property. She pulled out a binder full of what she called official HOA documents. The problem was they were all fake. She had created an elaborate set of bylaws complete with forged signatures and made-up legal language. She'd even designed a fake website and printed business cards. The officers did some quick research and confirmed what I already knew: there was no registered HOA for Pine Valley Estates. Patricia's organization wasn't just overstepping its authority, it was committing fraud. They arrested both women on the spot for breaking and entering, criminal trespassing, and impersonating a legal entity. The story spread through the neighborhood like wildfire. Someone posted the security footage on the local Facebook group with the caption, "Fake HOA President Meets Real Consequences." Within hours, it had over 1,000 shares and hundreds of comments. People started coming forward with their own stories about Patricia's harassment and fake fines. It turned out Patricia had collected over $30,000 in HOA dues and fines over the past 2 years. She'd been depositing the money into a personal account and using it to fund her lifestyle. Several neighbors had paid hundreds of dollars in fake fines just to avoid confrontation. One elderly couple had paid $1,000 because Patricia threatened to put a lien on their house. The district attorney took the case seriously. Patricia was charged with multiple counts of fraud, extortion, and impersonating a government entity. Sandra was charged as an accomplice, though she quickly agreed to testify against Patricia in exchange for a lighter sentence. The trial was a circus, with Patricia trying to represent herself and arguing that she was providing a necessary service to maintain property values. During the proceedings, more evidence came to light. Patricia had created fake legal documents, including cease and desist letters that appeared to come from a law firm. She'd been sending these to residents who questioned her authority. She'd also been using her fake position to get discounts at local businesses and had even tried to get the city to give her a designated parking spot at City Hall. The judge was not amused. Patricia was found guilty on all charges. The sentence came down hard. She received 5 years in prison for the fraud charges, with the possibility of parole after 2 years. She was also ordered to pay full restitution to everyone she had scammed, which totaled over $43,000 when all the fake fines were tallied up. The look on her face when the judge read the sentence was pure shock. Her mouth hung open, and she actually asked the judge if he was serious. Sandra got off lighter with 2 years of probation and 300 hours of community service. She broke down crying in court and apologized to everyone, claiming Patricia had manipulated her into thinking they were really helping the neighborhood. The judge ordered her to attend classes on critical thinking and ethics as part of her probation.